Great. Hey everyone, welcome back to Fab TV. I am, of course, Kirk Michelle, your host. And today we have a very special guest in the form of James White, who is the lead developer and founder of Legend Story Studios, and of course, the game that we all know and love, Flesh and Blood. Welcome, James.
Hey, thank you, Kirk, and thank you very much for inviting me on the show, and just everything you do for the community, mate. I absolutely just love what you've done with fabdb.net. And the content that comes through on the Wraith Times is just incredible. So thank you very much for all of your hard work, and it's really a pleasure to be on the show with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. To be honest, it's actually been quite a pleasure working with the community, working on FabDB and Wrath Times. And there's some more stuff coming in the future as well, so everybody needs to watch out for that. But we'll get straight into it. The first thing I really want to touch on, I think, is the big announcement that you made last week regarding the $1 million USD prize pool across all the various, official tournaments and events and that sort of thing. So I wanted to ask you, it's a substantial sum for starters. I think even more so because Legend Story Studios is rather small by comparison to some of the other big publishers out there. So I wanted to ask you, how did this come about, and why sort of the $1 million sort of prize pool? So what led you to kind of sit on that as a sum for the overall pool of rewards for everybody?
Well, who doesn't like $1 million? It's just a nice big round number, right? It's the gold standard. So it's a good number, a good size number, and we think that it adequately funds year one of our pro play aspirations. And look, as we go into the future and Flesh and Blood continues to grow, hopefully the number will get bigger as well. But I think it's a really exciting and substantial starting point. And look, Flesh and Blood always, we had the intention for it to be a competitively played game. COVID has obviously delayed that by a considerable amount of time, but as soon as the world opens up and we're able to travel internationally again, we really want to support international play. And it was always a no-brainer for us that needed to include the Pro Tour and a World Championship.
Yeah, right. And there's a bit of a breakdown in the article in regards to sort of the rough estimate of funds and the pool and sort of where it's going on that. And it does seem to be almost like a sort of pyramid or hierarchy in regards to events up, sort of leading up to the World Championship, which is quite interesting. But what was really interesting when you posted that, or your team posted that, is it reminded me quite a bit actually of Valve. I'm not sure if you're fully aware of some of the stuff that they've done, but when they released Dota 2 as part of sort of the launch party, they actually offered a $1 million prize pool. And it seems very much in line with that. It's kind of leading up to the first World Championship. There's a sort of a big stake in the round to say, look, we're pretty serious about this. Everybody come along and enjoy themselves. And there's some cash there for you in the takings if you get there. Yeah,
I mean, absolutely. Look, for us, it's about having that progression pathway as well. So, everything starts at your local game store, right? That is your local stomping ground where you can, go along to your weekly armory events or draft or whatever. And, if you just want to go along there and play some fun games, you can do that. But if you actually want to use it as that first step on your progression pathway towards that more competitive level of play, I think that's really important, that there's something to aspire to, that there's, a bigger goal for people who like competitive gaming to be working towards, and that really creates even more incentive to get into your local game store week on week, to practice and hone your skills against your local community, and then move up to that regional level of events, like your skirmishes and your road to nationals, and then your national level of events like the national champs and the callings, and then obviously the international stage at the top of the pyramid with the Pro Tour and the World Championship. So for us, that's how we see OP. It's really important that you have that really solid foundation at the bottom there of the pyramid, which just is your starting point, that in-store play experience that then leads to a pathway to greatness.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really interesting. I was talking to Alex Terrell, who anyone not aware of Alex, he's the editor at the Wrath Times. And we're actually really looking forward to being able to construct stories around players that have sort of started, at that local scene and slowly work their sort of way up to the big leagues. Very much almost like a sort of a pilgrimage in regards to sort of the travel and the paths that they've taken to get there. And so, sort of leading up into the calling events and the road to nationals, all that sort of stuff, really provides us, I think, some really cool opportunities for some really I think, original and interesting content, being able to follow certain players and sort of how they've gotten to the top.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I grew up playing competitive trading card games. It was my greatest passion, and it started week on week on week on my local game store, and then traveling around New Zealand to all the competitive events, and then whenever I could, getting overseas to play, and that's how I created my network of friends and professional contacts all across the world, was by traveling to play trading card games. And it's just an incredibly powerful thing, actually, just getting out there and doing something that you love and getting to meet really great, smart people along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So on to the next topic, or the first one. This actually comes from Alex himself. He said, Monarch saw a focus in the lore in respect to both Solana as well as the Demonastery, particularly with sort of the rise of Chain. And what's really interesting, I think, about the rise of Chain is he's actually become quite popular on the tournament circuit as well. So it kind of lends itself quite well to the lore. So these sort of two areas have sort of pushed themselves to the lore front, so to speak. Should we expect to see all the regions of Wrath sort of take center stage at some point?
Oh, absolutely. Look, we most looking forward to the journey, the expedition around the 8 regions of Wraith, and one by one, sort of introducing or revealing the hidden talent that lays within each region, and they all have their own, thing about them, their own culture and agendas within the greater scheme of the lore. And we're going to enjoy that journey and make it something that the fans around the world can really just look forward to, sort of opening up one more chapter as we move forward in time.
Fantastic. On the point of chapters, the original lore book was, it really hit, I think, an interesting note. One, because it's quite a collectible, given only to the retail stores or to certain creators and that sort of thing. And it became quite a sought after item. But more importantly, that I think, in regards to sort of the game itself, is that it painted this really beautiful picture of a world with sort of history and colorful characters, amazing sort of creatures and animals, flora and fauna, that sort of thing. Can we expect to see another lore book sort of coming forward, either restricted to retail stores or something available a little bit more publicly and more broadly to the gaming public?
100% at some point in time. My co-founder Robbie Wen, who's our creative director, he put hundreds and hundreds, thousands of hours into building out the lore, the history, and the future of Wraith from the point in time that we are at the moment.
Oh, okay.
And so during that 7-year period when we were developing the business and developing the game system, I was more focused on the game side of it, and Robbie was very much focused on the creative side of it. And so there's a lot of content and a lot of material in the bank, and stories that he wants to tell. And they will come through. The stage that we're at right now is just making sure that we are doing a great job for fans around the world and for retailers to actually play the game and getting access to the product. So that's sort of been more of our focus over the last sort of 6 months or so, or year even. But it will come back around to us having more bandwidth to get the second book out and the third book and so on as we go forward. And it is in the pipeline, but I'll be honest, it is a little way off at this moment.
Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting point about, sort of product availability. It certainly seems to be a vast improvement in regards to sort of where it was maybe sort of 6 to 12 months ago, where stock shortages was basically the story, instead of trying to find product. And I think in that sense also contributed to some of this sort of surge in pricing that we saw across a lot of the cards. So that does seem to be in quite a better position than it was previously. But I'm still hearing sort of the occasional random story of people just not quite getting the product that they're after. Is this sort of still due to supply issues, or is there something else going on there, or is it just still too popular to keep up with?
So there's a few factors going on. Like Flesh and Blood is growing so fast, like all across the world. There's just very, very strong demand. The metric for me that's really important is that it is unlimited available readily. That's the important one. And we sort of got to the point where availability of unlimited is much, much better than it was previously. We made an announcement a month or so back about the additional manufacturing partners that we brought on out of the US and Japan alongside our Belgium original facility.
Yep.
So that extra capacity has definitely gone a long way to addressing the imbalance that did exist between supply and demand. Look, global supply chain is just an absolute mess for all industries, not just gaming, but for every single industry. Shipping delays and availability is just the worst it's ever been. So some of these factors are contributing to maybe delays in availability and so on. But just all in all, availability of Welcome to Wraith, Arcane Rising, Crucible of War, Unlimited now, Monarch Unlimited, and soon Tales will be, it's pretty stable, I'd say.
Yeah, cool. That's good to hear. Just to kind of reiterate on your point, I'm looking at getting a new gaming machine. There's a new PC game coming out called New World, which I'm quite hyped about. But just the materials available to kind of make graphics cards and that sort of thing have seen a huge surge in pricing for those particular products. And also completely separately, we just recently had double glazed windows installed, but it actually took us about 4 months just to wait for the aluminium to enter the country so they could make the frames, which is just, has never happened before.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And look, it's not just delays with Legend Story Studios getting flesh and blood from the manufacturer, from Cardamone to the market. It's issues upstream from that. It's about availability of raw materials for the manufacturers to even make the games in the first place. So like there's a whole bunch of cascading issues caused by supply chain disruptions due to COVID and other factors as well. So look, there's a whole bunch of challenges around there, but I think that we're in a pretty good spot, and we've certainly really addressed the issue, the imbalance between supply and demand to a pretty decent extent. But again, as I say, the growth is just tremendous across the world. I think we've doubled the number of stockist local game stores around the world since Monarch released. Between Monarch and the Tales releases, it's doubled, and the number of players is just growing so fast. The amount of organized play activity, attendance at Road to Nationals, and just weekly armory events is just off the charts. So look, things are looking really good, and there's a ton of momentum behind the game.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, it's good to see. On that note, you pointed out, I think maybe a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, that the overall player base for Flesh and Blood had hit 200,000 players. So what's it sitting at the moment, if you're able to share that? Yeah,
I mean, it's sort of around that metric. There's always sort of a multiplier between people who are officially playing organized play and people who are just playing the game, right? So, you can look at Magic the Gathering, for example. They've, frequently over the years, their CEO during their quarterly earnings report will say the number of people who are playing Magic the Gathering as a multiple of people who are engaged with active organized play. And it's very much the same for all games, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, and Flesh and Blood as well. So, we can see the number of people who are registered in gym and player activity, week on week at armory events and skirmishes and Road to Nationals and so on. Based on a multiplier of that and what we, from our research can see sort of an average spend per player is, there's a couple 100,000 people playing this game around the world. It's
amazing.
Flesh and Blood is a very global game. And I think a lot of people don't realize how global it is. We're in over 30 countries. We're in over 2,000 stores around the world. This is a global reaching game. It's just incredible. Yeah,
absolutely. So getting to the game then, which popular deck archetype has surprised you the most from the player base, either in its popularity or in its innovation?
Maybe Dash Control was probably the one that maybe surprised me the most in terms of how popular it became during the last National Champs season. It was, and maybe the game was just still in a point of infancy where people, or the season was too short, or COVID caused too many disruptions to competitive play that just wasn't enough, organized play happening for the metagame to evolve past what dash control was and how to beat it, but just sort of how that deck became the best deck for that season. I thought was it was surprising that the metagame didn't evolve past it. As developers, we felt like there was a lot more to that particular format than what maybe it came across as being.
Yep.
But otherwise, look, we got an incredible in-house development team, and so far they've pretty much covered off what we see played out in the real world to the most extent. Yeah,
absolutely. I think what was really interesting about Monarch in particular, and I remember sort of claiming this on Facebook, I was starting to see spoilers, and my claim was basically that Monarch was going to introduce a level of sort of aggro play that we hadn't seen previously. And the reason for that was because I think sort of the lack of defense reactions in the set, but also we're starting to move away from sets that actually had a lot of sort of defense available because of the expanding card board. Like, for example, back in Welcome to Wrath and Arcane Rising, when I visited you guys and played my first calling, defense reactions were everywhere. Like, it was just hard to get past defense, particularly even as warrior, just kind of trying to get past all defense reactions. But as time has gone on, the card pool is wide, and there's less defense reactions. I think as a percentage of the available card pool there now, that we seem to be moving away a little bit from that. What's really interesting, I think, was the Road to Nationals that Matt Rogers brought dash control back and won anyway. What's your sort of view of that? Firstly, the calling was won by a sort of control/fatigue ninja. Matt Rogers has won quite a few as control dash and still seems to be quite strong. Do you feel we have the tools available to kind of get past that sort of meta currently, or are we still waiting for that, that next set to kind of get past that point, and Monarch sort of the starting point of that?
Yeah, I mean, it was very intentional to dial back the prevalence of defense reactions. Like, we knew that these sort of defense reaction heavy, control-y type decks were very strong in the early stages of Flesh and Blood's metagame evolution, and we specifically put Command and Conquer and Arcane Rising to provide some tools to punch through defense reactions and to punish the old defense reaction and the whole trick.
Easily one of the most sought after cards at the moment still.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of the best, if not the best card, probably. It's it's just good old Command and Conquer, does the trick a lot of the time. But yeah, we have, I think, provided more tools for the aggressive strategies to do very well. And many of it, if you look at like Matt Rogers' recent dash deck, like, dude, that was a very aggressive dash deck that he won with. It had like triple maximum velocity in it. I think he actually swung the pendulum back over to the other end of the dash archetypes. But I think, look, it's just important that there's a range of different archetypes and builds and strategies that are available to the players, and I don't think that defense reactions are out of favor, and I don't think that they are ruling the metagame either. They're probably in about a healthy spot at the moment, where there's some great defense reaction based decks like K2 Control, and then you've got decks that don't want to play defense reactions at all, like some of the Runeblade decks that really care about the non-attack action synergies, like Chain, for example.
Yep. Yeah, it's I think what's really interesting about the meta at the moment is I think it's probably the healthiest it's ever been. Like, if you look at all of the character stuff that are sort of winning Road to Nationals, I don't think we've seen a repeat yet. We've seen Ninja. I think we saw Bravo the other day, Reiner as well. We've got Dash. So it seems to be really well sort of diversified from what it has been previously.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of diversity in decks making top 8 and a lot of different heroes winning tournaments.
Yep.
Look, Chain is probably the deck to beat, and I think that he has won the most so far, but it's not by a gross amount, right? It's not like, oh my God, the format's like, degenerate and broken and you can only ever win with Chain. It's just straight up not true.
Yeah.
And I think that like Chain is obviously a great deck, and every metagame is always going to be a deck to beat, and that's kind of the nature of trading card games. And Chain is very, very good, and he's going to win a lot. But there's certainly tools available to beat Chain.
Yeah, exactly. So, shifting gears slightly here, what's your favorite piece of art in Flesh and Blood?
Adult Prism.
Adult Prism. You've got a cold foil then, or?
Oh, of course, yeah, yeah. I'm a big fan of Adult Prism, for
Yeah,
sure.
nice. Okay, what is it about that artwork in particular that really grabs you?
Um, I don't know. She just looks great.
Yeah, fair enough. And
She
that's all it
just
needs,
looks
right? Rule of
really.
cool.
She just looks great, and she's smart. She's
Yeah,
using her brain to outwit her enemies.
yeah, that's right. One thing I really like about, I mean, I kind of like the Ranger gameplay, but I think the Ranger that's coming in Tales of Aria might grab me because I just love the artwork of that one. There's something very mystical
Yeah,
about it. And I'm really looking forward to see if, there's some sort of talent associated with that
yeah.
as well. So very
And the
cool.
name, surely. When you told me about your daughter arriving in the name, it was about the same time that we were signing off Lexi for production, and I was like, oh my God, Kirk's going to be all over this hero.
Oh, amazing. That's even better. That now I
Yeah.
have to get a special version of it for little Lexi. Yeah, great. So I think I've got another question here about the game's growth, but I think you sort of answered that previously. So we'll skip that one. The next one is, where do you find the inspiration for the various heroes and characters throughout Fab's lore? Is this something that Robbie is mostly sort of responsible for, or do you have a lot of input on that as well? Because I think, remember, I mean, Dorinthia is based on your grandmother, right?
Yeah, that's right. Look, I just draw a lot of inspiration from many different places, from reading a lot, and just from looking out the window at nature, like whether it's the birds like inspiring me, or it's just seeing interesting things like the snow-capped mountains or whatever. Like, just I think you can draw inspiration from all kinds of places, and
Yeah.
I've always just been interested in fantasy, and just had a really big imagination, and it all, I don't know, it just weaves itself together to create these heroes, and try and create some synergies between themes and mechanics. I think it's really important. Like we put a lot of work and effort into trying to make the gameplay actually feel like what this class and this, the character that we build around that, for it to make sense.
Yeah.
For like for the ninja to feel, swift and agile, with his little attacks, compared to, a character like Bravo, who was, slow but powerful, and someone like Viscerai, who is, just sort of tapping into that dark art, or Chain is probably even a better example, just like really to capture that synergy between how the game plays out and the character that we wrap around that, and deliver it in just a package that makes sense for fans.
Yeah.
But it is a teamwork. Robbie and myself, we work very, very closely throughout the process. As I said, we worked on Flesh and Blood for many, many years, so we have like a cast of, I guess, of heroes which are slated to be released over time, and once we start skinning them and creating the themes around them, and the names and where they come from and all of that, is very much a collaboration between myself and Robbie, that flows through from what the design of the hero is actually doing.
Yeah, fair enough. How does it? We're running a little bit of time here, but I think we've got a little bit of time for this one. Yep. I was on the Attack Action podcast just recently, and I was talking about sort of, game design more generally. And there's been some criticisms, I think, sort of aimed at the fairly horizontal sort of design space you've created through the heroes, and sort of the way you can expand that way. And I made the analogy with basically two separate games, one being War Machine and the other one being Guild Ball. Both are actually tabletop miniatures games, which is my first true love as a child. And the reason why I paint that as an interesting analogy is that War Machine has 4 factions, and the only way they were able to grow it was to basically grow it vertically. And so you had these factions with just so many different units and things. It became really difficult to balance. By contrast, Guild Ball had, I think at the end, before it finished, was about 15, 16 guilds, and a fairly small number of characters for each. So each guild sort of sat within a very specific design space. It feels to me like you're doing a very similar thing with the sort of hero's design. So maybe you come up with an idea that may fit as a different hero, and then you kind of design the cards around them. Is that generally how you approach it, or you just have an interesting idea for a card and then you sort of start working with that?
there's not many cards which are sort of designed in complete isolation. It's to let me just step back one step here. Like when we're designing a standalone set, so Welcome to Wraith, Arcane Rising, Monarch, and Tales, a huge amount of the design is made with consideration to supporting limited play, so sealed deck and booster draft.
Yeah,
this is a major driver of the design and development process. So yeah, it's not just about, oh, that's a cool card, let's just jam it in there. It really needs to support that outcome of creating exceptional sealed deck and booster draft experiences. Just sort of related to your analogy of those other two games, like, Flesh and Blood, yeah, it's gone, horizontal in the terms of the number of different classes that are available, but depth will start building into these. As we go further into we're not just going to end up with 68 different classes. Like, we're going to start building depth into them, right?
Great. Yeah,
and that was
awesome.
always the intention. And for cards within sort of, I look at them as being pillars, whether it's the illusionist pillar or the ninja pillar or the wizard pillar or whatever, the runeblade pillar. There's like mobility between different heroes within your, the pillar of runeblade cards, and you can, kind of see that, already with some of the, classes that have come out a second time or a third time, and how, cards sort of are interchangeable between the different heroes, and some cards which, for example, were great in Katsu, aren't so good in Ira, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't jam your flying kicks in your Katsu deck typically. So yeah, like we're very mindful and conscious of creating utility for people's collections. Like that's a huge part. That's part of why we don't have a rotating card legality format, like other trading card games do. Like we want people to have great utility for their collection over many, many, many years.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. On that note, in regards to pillars, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems to me like the generic pool or the generic pillar for cards is actually probably the most difficult and also the most dangerous sort of card pool to expand into, just because, it can affect so many characters at once. So how do you decide whether a card sort of sits between, and we're getting a little bit off topic here, something I wanted to talk to you about separately, but we're on the topic now, we're on the subject, is, how do you decide whether a card goes into sort of a generic pool or more specific to a hero or a class?
Yeah, so every class has its, we have a color pie, which is sort of the things that class is allowed to do or able to do or specializes in. And then there's a whole bunch of things that they, are not allowed to do, that we won't give that particular class or that particular talent. And, the same for generic. There's just generics are supposed to be, bland, for lack of a better term, just sort of nuts and bolts cards. I know there are a few generics which are far from bland. They're very exciting, like your Command and Conquers and Light and Strikes. But sort of in general, generics are sort of very nuts and boltsy.
Okay, fair enough. Would you, if it's kind of nuts, but do you see them as sort of almost like glue, or more like utility pieces that kind of fill out certain roles? So
the primary role of generics is to make limited work, to be frank.
Oh, right. Okay. Interesting. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty cool. Okay, cool. So one last question, and then I'll let you go, James. So thank you for that. Do you see, and this is another question for the community, is do you see Flesh and Blood being a good candidate for cube drafting as the games card pool grows?
Sure. Why not? I think one of the great things about trading card games is people can do whatever the hell they like with them. They can make up their own formats, and I think that that one's over to the community to work out how it should be structured and how it should work. For us as a company, we really focus on the four primary formats, which is Classic Constructed, Blitz, Booster Draft, and Sealed Deck, and that's what our focus is primarily on as developers. And there will be other things sort of over time that we do, look at and put some resources into, like, Ultimate Pit Fight does sort of float around on the edges there, and we from time to time make some cards sort of as a nod to that. And PvE is something that we'll be, looking more at in the future as well. But it's the four primary formats that I mentioned is where generally our focus is, and I think that the community should just run wild with all sorts of weird and wacky and wonderful, formats to meet their fancy.
Yeah, for sure. I think where that sort of question emanates from is on my own Discord for Card Tech. We had a bit of discussion about Cube previously, and I don't know if the person that asked us on Facebook was part of that community, but a couple of the members did suggest that due to the sort of smaller card pool, it makes Cube drafts a little bit more difficult to achieve. So I think that may be where it comes from. But anyways, James, it's been great to have you on. It's great to see you again. Congratulations again on sort of the growing success of Flesh and Blood and where we're going. Do you have anything you'd like to mention or say to the community before we go?
Just thank you to everybody for your tremendous support. And look, we've got Tales of Aria previous season starting from the 1st of September. It's going to be a really exciting ride. And we have pre-releases coming through in selected stores. I think those stores are published on flagship.com now, or if not, in the coming days. So there's going to be a tremendous number of pre-releases running across the world in selected stores. I think there's over 700 pre-releases running around the world for this particular release, which is just phenomenal.
Yep.
And look, just stay safe, everyone. And when it's it's safe to do so, I look forward to traveling to Australia, to the US, to Europe, all around the place, and connecting with the community and attending some of these Pro Tours and Grand Prix and the tremendous amount of events that we have planned for 2022. And just until then, stay safe.
Amazing.
Keep playing.
Yeah, we'll try. Yeah. It's a bit difficult in Australia at the moment, but we'll try. Anyways, thank you so much, James. Thank everybody else who's listening or watching at home, and we'll talk to you all soon. Bye.
Yeah, thanks, Kurt.
Ciao.